All right, welcome to the Concrete Connection Project podcast, episode 6. And we're down performing and creating on every single street of the Adelaide CBD, raising money and awareness for mental health and mental health charities that are supporting people that are struggling with their mental health. And I'm down on Market Street today, and I'm joined by singer, songwriter, poet, dancer, and a few other feathers in the cap, I'm sure, which we'll find out all about today. Jen Lush.
Hello.
Yep.
How are you going? I'm going to hold this in the right spot.
Yeah, keep it nice and close.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned a few things there before we get into some discussions about mental health. Yeah, so on your website, I was doing a bit of digging last night, and yes, I know you as a singer-songwriter, also a curator of concerts, Stone Pony, down in Wollonga. But I found something which intrigued me, and I also know you from what you've got on your website as the folk rock decade with Cat Dog Bird.
Correct.
But before that, in the UK and Europe, there was an electro music phase.
Yes, there was.
Now, can you tell me about that, please?
Well, it was a band called Savome that kind of started must have been around the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And it was electronica, sort of trip-hop stuff, influenced by Massive Attack and Portishead and all of that kind of thing. Very loungy, very laid-back, electronic beds with vocals on top. And we played around here, around Adelaide, and released a couple of albums. And then we went over to London to live, so we sort of toured through Japan and things a little bit, and then played over in the UK a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, unravelling the layers. Yeah, that is something that I did not know about you.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, that would have been a fun time.
It was a fun time. It was really awesome.
Was this a pre-kids era?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm sort of trying to remember details about that the other day because someone was asking me, and I was realising that I have no recollection of booking gigs or packing up, loading in gear, or organising payments or anything like that, or doing all of the promotion stuff. I don't think I did any of that. I think the two fellas, my husband and Mark Scrooby, who were the other people in it, I'm pretty sure they must have done everything. So what a diva, because now these days I think I do pretty much all the things. So yeah, it was an easier time.
Wow, and you did that with your husband. Oh, how lovely.
Yeah. We got together. We got hitched very early in life, and he and I were both at uni, and it was kind of at the end of our uni days that we decided to do this.
Wow,
so
epic. Peeling back the layers of the onion of Jen Lush.
The onion of Jen Lush, indeed.
We're down here. We're trying to open up the conversations about mental health, and I always like to start the podcast with, what do the words mental health mean to you?
Mental health means to me, I think it's sort of mental health just is. Like, I feel like it's something that is always present in my mind, but whether or not it's healthy, good mental health, or whether it's not so good mental health. But it's becoming more and more evident to me that I need to take care of it in this sort of similar way that I might think about my physical health. But I kind of see it as a bit of a spectrum, I suppose, that much like my physical health, I mean that sometimes I feel like I'm on top of it, sometimes I feel strong and good, and other times super slouchy, and I haven't done anything to look after that, and I feel quite neglectful, and I feel like that's the same with mental health. It sort of seems to be on this sort of sliding spectrum where it can very easily be neglected, and you find yourself all of a sudden not feeling so great.
Well, I think something I've discovered in this journey is that self-awareness is a big thing. I think. In my later years, I've started exercising more, and I definitely feel that physically when I haven't been. Yeah. And I think that is going hand in hand with, good mental health as well. I think, I have a bit of an analogy of, when I'm not feeling that good physically, it does go hand in hand with mentally. But it's sort of like, how when you get in the garden and you turn on the garden tap and, suddenly all brown water or something comes out, you need to flush it out a little bit.
Yep.
I feel like that sometimes I need to do that, and I think self-awareness of that is great. Now, listening to a lot of your music over the past few days, you've got a strong connection, and you write a lot about the earth and the environments around you, nature. And do you have a strong connection with nature, or do you find that helps with your mental health?
Yeah, I do. And I find when I'm busy, and I have been lately, I don't probably get out into it as much as I need to. And we got a dog a few years ago, and he's pretty great. And he needed to go for runs all the time, and I'd find myself in the rec park nearby. So I'd go down into the, into the bushland and walk with him, and that became a regular thing. And I think that was something that kind of saved me for a number of reasons over the last 5 years or so since we've had him. But he's been coming a little bit old and decrepit, and so am I actually. And so I'm not doing as much running in the rec park. And I went in there the other day after having quite a long break from going in, and I actually wrote, after I'd been for a walk, I got home and wrote a whole passage about why I've left it so long, how important looking at the trees, touching the trees, being on the ground, and actually, even just putting your hands on the ground that you're on, like really noticing where you are, and the smells and the changing colours of the landscape, the detailed nuances of colour that shifts, with the light. And it's, I think it does something really important to the brain and body.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And, you had an album, well, maybe not a full album, but you've got an awesome quote that I found on your website again, and it was about birds. And you said, jogging your memory, that birds can represent both beauty and terror. Now, can you talk a bit about that? Because I think that could be, for me, I know you might be talking about birds, but for me, that can, I think beauty and terror go hand in hand with a lot of things, and particularly even chasing your dreams as a musician. I think there's a lot of beauty in doing it, but I think it can also be very scary. Can you talk about what you meant there?
Yeah.
If you remember what you meant?
Yeah, no, I do, because I realised, a few years ago that I was somebody with ornithophobia, I think it's called, a fear of birds. I love birds. I think they are representative of a number of things that we probably all identify with, like this sort of freedom and this beauty, and they do represent that for me as well. And from a distance, I can really appreciate them. But when they're close to me, when they get too close, and that can be anything with feathers really, I can really panic and have quite a strong reaction. My daughter loves birds, and it was her first word actually, was bird, and for the longest time I tried to not let them know that I was terrified of being close to them. So you go and feed the ducks, and I'd do my very best to stay close by and things. But every now and again a bird will fly inside our house, and the windows are often open. We have big double doors, and birds will fly in. And one time I shut myself in the upstairs bathroom for over an hour while I waited for it to go away. And when my daughter's home, I'll just scream out and slide down the stairs and and hurt myself quite badly sometimes, just trying to get it away. But she'll come and just gently open the doors a bit further and let the birds out. And so I guess for me, I am terrified of being close to birds, but I think that I often use them in my songwriting because the feeling of anxiety for me is much like a bird flapping its wings against my face. Like, it's that same sort of sensation, but within my rib cage. So, so I guess, they terrify me, and the feeling of them being close to me is much like that anxious response. They're kind of really closely tied.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. well, maybe not great to have such a fear or anxiety, but that's a great story. Now, you are a creator, or maybe a creator, but also a curator of the Stone Pony live music series down in Wollonga.
Yeah.
And you do that with your dad.
Yeah.
And your dad was a musician as well. And how
Yeah.
much was music in the house for you growing up?
Well, it was a lot. I think he was always playing the guitar and working on a song or singing someone else's songs, usually Gordon Lightfoot or Beatles, or thinking of a lot of just sort of 70s folk rock that was going on. And so that was a big part of my childhood, trawling along to the folk festivals, much like yours and my kids would be, just really familiar with that environment and going along and listening to lots of different music and sometimes seeing your dad up on the stage singing as well.
Yeah.
So I guess he kind of opened the possibility to me, I suppose, of making, of that being a something that you could do. And sometimes I'd join him in his bush band on stage and sing a few songs when I was little. And then when I was a teenager, I remember jumping up at folk festivals and singing a few songs with him then as well. And then in my early 20s, we were in a little bit of a band together. We'd sing at wineries and places like that.
That's awesome.
Mostly covers, but a few originals. And so, yeah, I think growing up with music as a given was a lovely thing, but I never really saw myself as somebody who would make music. I was always much more into dance and theatre and stuff. So
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I think that's a real lucky thing to share with a parent. I mean, I'm not sure if my son appreciates it right now, but he's done more. He's been up and played more festival stages and done more ABC radio interviews than like some local musicians would dream of. Like, I don't think he realises, the level of things he's walked into sometimes.
Yep.
But I think it's a great thing to share. And then, as we get older, like yourself, we can appreciate, those moments of having, art around the house.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And it being a comfort space, a place of that you can return to that feels safe and comforting, I think. That was my familiarity with it.
Yeah, well, you've got a song called Gold Thread.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
I do.
Yep. So there's a few topics in there. I think, it touches on anxiety and depression, but it actually more reflects on the joys of life. Is that right?
Yeah, it came out of a conversation with a counsellor I was seeing at the time. So I was looking down the barrel of releasing an album of songs that I'd set music around poetry. The Night's Insomnia, the album's called, and I was looking at releasing that, and I found myself, in a terrible downward spiral about putting it out into the world. It was the first thing I'd done since leaving Cat Dog Bird, the band, and it was under my own name, and all I could hear were the mistakes in it, all of the things that I wish I'd done better or hadn't done well, and I was frozen with fear about putting it out. So but there were a lot of people relying on me that had contributed to the project, all the poets, but all of the people who'd been part of designing, creating all the artwork, videos, not to mention the people who played on the album. So I felt like I needed to get to a point where I could release it, but I had this launch date coming and I just didn't know how to approach it because I just felt sick about doing it. So I thought it would be the great exposure of myself as a fraud, as somebody who really had put herself in a position that she had no right to be in, and I felt a lot of shame in that. So I went and saw a really amazing person actually who walked me through it. She said I worked quickly, and I said I haven't got a choice. I've got to work quickly if I'm going to release this album, because at this point I just can't, and there's a due date and everything. And so I went there to see if I could get myself into a place where I could do it. And there was a lot of... I didn't realise at the time that I was quite depressed. I thought I was all right, but there are a lot of things in the song Gold Thread that talk about that, sitting in a bath for a really long time, crying when I knew that the children were in bed, things that I would realise and recognise as being issues, but at the time I didn't. So she talked about mining for joy. She talked about deep diving into the spaces where you would feel contentment or even happiness. And she said for me to sort of try and find those things, and that dwelling on those might help me get off this sort of loop of panic that I was on. And at least settle me down enough to be able to then think clearly. So she called it Mining for Joy. And so the song Gold Thread is actually about the things that I came up with that would help me get off my loop of panic. So they all had one thing in common, and that is goldness. So that was where the song came from.
Wow, yeah, that's great. I love going back to, the bird quote, represent both beauty and terror, because, as an artist, I feel like, you feel, you're trying to attain this beautiful thing, like making an album and stuff, and then when it's so far away, the journey starts off and it is beauty, you're going towards this thing, but as it looms closer, the wings of that bird are flapping closer, they're flapping harder, and then the anxiety sets in, like, for me, even working on this project, I started trying to, lay the foundations back in October last year, and I'm like, oh, yep, and then every piece of the puzzle's coming together, and then you get so close, to the end, to actually starting it, or, releasing something, and then that's when, it can really start feeling overwhelming, and that's when I feel like, when you're so close to the end, or even so close to the beginning, that's when things can get really overwhelming.
Definitely, absolutely, and I think for me the making is so important. If I'm making, if I'm allowing space to be making, then I'm pretty good. That creates some sort of balance in the rest of my life, which can sometimes feel, really hard to get some equilibrium. But if I know that I'm putting some time aside to do some making, then I'm pretty good. But the making is the safe place. It's the putting it out there. It's the performing or the releasing music into the world that I find an important part of the process sometimes, but very, very terrifying at times as well.
Well, Cal Williams Jr., who I'm sure you know,
yes,
said something quite interesting, that was like, a musician or an artist or anyone that's creating something needs to be introverted enough to be able to stay at home in their safe place and create, but then extroverted enough to then go and release and perform. And I thought that's so true, because sometimes artists aren't both. So I know I'm more comfortable in the creating space. It's then when going out is the part where you sort of got to grit your teeth and white knuckle it a bit and hope for the best, because it's quite easy then to want to just drop back into that introverted space.
Absolutely. And the risk, I feel like it's quite risky to perform. You're really putting yourself on the line absolutely every time, and there's all kinds of things that can disrupt that situation. But I feel like if you by putting ourselves into that space where you are open to judgment, you are open to something going badly wrong. But by doing that, I feel like you're also opening yourself up for the possibility of, something very beautiful to happen. And I talk about in the song in Gold Thread where, in the last verse is about being in a performing space where you're effectively participating in an exchange with the people that are there, and there's the possibility of a gold thread, that thing that's connecting everybody up and helping us to feel like we're together, we're part of something. That doesn't always happen, and I feel like that's the risk I take every time. I could perform and it just is like a rock falling to the floor. But then there's also the possibility of something very, very beautiful happening, and a sense of community, which is effectively why I bother doing it in the first place.
Well, yeah, you mentioned things were getting a little tough, and you sought the counsellor, and would you recommend that? Would you recommend counselling and therapy and things like that?
Yeah, I really would. I've been seeing someone recently, a psychologist, because I was trying to find out why I was experiencing burnout. And I have this sort of capacity or lack of capacity to organise my life in a way that feels sustainable. Sort of say yes to everything and then try and figure out how to do it later. And then not really doing a very good job of holding everything. Seems like I am, and I'm sort of paddling fast, but there's always some aspect that will fall down and crumble. And so I was seeing someone recently about that, and she was amazing and really helped me to understand some things about myself. And yeah, I think I've probably gone through, the first 30 years of my life and didn't really ever seek any proper help, really. I just sort of stumbled along. Whereas now I feel like I would definitely reach out for some help and notice the signs. I don't think I really recognised the signs. I probably had my first known panic moment when I was finishing uni. And I recognise it now, but at the time I didn't realise that was what it was.
Well, I reckon now is, in like these conversations and things like that, I think, we've got to be more open about talking about it, more open to help as well. A lot of people feel there's a shame in asking for help, but I think that's why we're trying to, knock down those walls, and asking for help's okay, and it doesn't need to be, lying on the couch shrink psychologist. It can be, a local counsellor, just someone to sometimes just get stuff off your chest. I just sort of didn't like the feeling of being vulnerable and kind of, which is unusual because I know that half the time I'd talk about just about everything, but but I didn't like the idea of somebody I guess judging me or making a decision about what I was like, or I don't know, I just felt that's a really exposing thing to do, to say all the things that are shit about your own stuff. And I guess I always want people to see me in my best light, and going and seeing somebody immediately tips that on its head, because you're immediately exposing yourself to, you have to be honest, and that's a hard thing to do. But I did realise during the process of that that they've actually heard and seen pretty much everything, the people that you're speaking to, and there really isn't a feeling of judgment at all, and it was actually a really open and supportive space. And I think generally as well, they're counsellors, therapists, they're not there to judge. They're creating a safe space for you to be able to nearly even make your own case and talk it out, and to a point where you can nearly make you get to unload all these thoughts that are in your mind, you get everything off your chest, and you generally start building a case and figuring out your path just by talking. Nearly, they're just offering the space, really. Well, we've gone pretty deep.
We've gone deep.
Yeah, but we are both lucky enough to be performing at the Festival of Voices in Tasmania.
We are.
Now, you're performing, but you're also running some workshops for children as well. And so, truck.
Truck.
Now, we both worked alongside Cal at the winter school holiday program, in which was sort of like a songwriting blues folk workshop thing. But yeah, you offering workshops for children to do songwriting. So do you do that often, or what? Yeah.
It's a big part of my everyday.
Mm-hmm.
So every day I write songs with children, whether it be mostly at kindergarten. I work at Eden Hills Kindergarten writing songs with children and kind of organising a bit of a music curriculum for early childhood.
Wow.
But I also do that kind of thing through Inkpot Arts, and city libraries might, get me to come and do something in the school holidays, and I've got something coming up for the next school holidays with city libraries, doing songwriting with children or that kind of thing, music experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably, and through Karklu as well, actually, so slightly older children in Karklu. So that's kind of my bread and butter. That's kind of how I roll most of the days. And so I feel really lucky about that, because children are natural songwriters and have an enormous capacity for making art. And they are blessed with the lack of, at that age anyway, especially in early childhood, blessed with the lack of editing their own selves before they are able to make something. So all the ideas come out, they're all on the table.
And generally a lack of embarrassment.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's brilliant. And also they say things in their unique way. They haven't yet learnt to formulate their language to be correct English or grammatically correct or whatever. And so you get things put in peculiar and fascinating ways, and I just love it.
There'll be some real gold.
Oh, there's gold every day. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be doing a bit more of that over in Tasmania.
And that's awesome. Yes. Well, yeah, we're covering it all here.
I know.
So I think so. Yeah. That was. Yeah. I had a question. What other feathers are in the cap? Because songwriter, poet. And you mentioned you were into dance, and so that was it was nice to hear about. That's what you do. You talk, the music with the children. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, dance sort of I've left that behind to a large degree, because I realised fairly early on in my dance career that I didn't have the dedication nor the real ability to work professionally in that field. I just got to England and didn't feel like I had the energy for the daily class, which is probably a bare minimum thing. So dance, though, still finds its way through, filters through into all kinds of things that I do, and I very much love it. But I mainly limit my public dance outings to when I perform on stage and let loose a bit and fling myself around the stage. One of my teenage sons said to me, "Are you going to be doing your doubtful and hideous moves again?" And I said, "I certainly will be. You don't need to go." But yeah.
Well, there we go. There's that filter that's even teenagers aren't afraid of using with their mothers or their fathers.
No,
that's for sure.
No. That's it.
So what apart from Festival of Voices in June and July, what else is coming up for Jen Lush?
Well, I'm going to start trying to make some more music soon. I've had I feel like I'm in a fallow period where I have just kind of haven't really written any songs of my own for a little while now. Released in August last year an album called Hum of the Metal, which was around contemporary poetry. It was first commissioned by the Denmark Festival of Voice as a project for in WA, not Denmark, Denmark overseas. And that kind of led to wanting to record that. So released that in August last year and have done a little bit of playing around and sending that out into the world in different ways, but I guess I've kind of been just trying to gather myself after that and find some new ways to make, I think. So I said to the band, I work with very, very beautiful musicians in my band, James Brown and Sam Cagney and Mark Seddon and Paul Angus, and I said to them, I think what I'd like to do next is have you guys throw things to me and I will respond to them. So rather than generating the material and then sort of making demos in my kitchen and then sending it out to them and then them bouncing back their ideas from that as fully formed songs, I'd kind of rather have fragments that we toss around and it be a lot more collaborative.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking to do next.
Yeah. Sometimes, especially if you're, the primary songwriter, it's nice to be able to, get all those inspirations, have the door open to have other people's input because, you never know what gems can be made from that.
And I think I just I'm afraid of kind of trotting along the same track a bit and, I'm fairly, we are all, I suppose, limited by what we can do or the particular biases that we have with our influences or our skill set or whatever. And I just want to get off my own track for a while and jump on someone else's track and see what happens. I really love collaborating. So,
and I think that will also open up, maybe you do that this time and then you might go back to, being the primary songwriter because you've gathered all this extra information and different ideas and, from other people and then you'll be able to bring that into your own.
Yeah, that's
now,
the plan.
We talk about the tool belt, filling up the tool belt because we don't think there's, a one-stop shop to help people that might be struggling with their mental health. And, a few things that I've come across is, self-awareness and community and things like that. Would you have any tools we can add to our tool belt that might just help someone along the way or anything just from your own experience that's helped you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a bit like what I was saying about earlier with mining for joy, trying to notice the things that bring you to a place of peace, and allowing those things to become part of your consciousness and maybe even seek them out to kind of keep you lifted, looking after that. But I guess also just having an awareness of your own mental health. How's it going? Checking in. I try and check in a bit more regularly. Listen to my self-talk and have a little notice of it and see where that's going. And then by being aware of where things are sitting, then you've got a bit of at least you've then got a choice. Often if you're not aware of what's going on, you're not really making choices about it. You're sort of more prone to maybe spiraling downwards or whatever. So I feel like by making an effort to be aware of where I'm at, I can then make choices around some strategies to keep myself going. But mainly doing things, I think also doing things that are good for you, that that are good. So for me, it's about being able to read books. I need to have time to read. That feeds so much in me.
I definitely feel it when I'm not reading, and I only really started reading in the last couple of years properly. But if I don't read and choose to scroll on my phone, sometimes it's nearly like waking up with a hangover or something. Yeah. And like I can feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing. I think I'm trying to do less on social media and trying to just do what's important for music things or to sustain, the work that you're doing, but spending a lot less time looking and scrolling because I think for me that's not a good space for my head at all.
I don't think it's a good space for anyone.
Nah.
Just to be randomly scrolling, looking for that dopamine hit that never comes.
Never comes. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can get some stuff that's funny, and I like a good laugh and stuff, but they're few and far between. I feel like the algorithms are so sophisticated now that they kind of know how to hit you in just the right spot, and it's not always a good spot. So,
Well, Jen, I appreciate your time. This is a great podcast. Thank you.
It's so lovely to be here, and I just love what you're doing. I'm going to be really checking in on all of them that you do because it's so important to be able to have this chat, but also what you're doing, bringing music to every single city. I mean, every single, it will be every single city.
Well,
every single street of every city. That can be your life's work.
Yeah, well, I actually did Google to see how many streets there are in New York.
Yep.
But there's too many for that. For one person anyway, but maybe we could get a big collaborative thing going on one day.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
If I ever finish this one.
Yeah.
But we're going to get there. But I'm going to link down the songs and the albums and some film clips of Jan's that we talked about, particularly Gold Thread. And yeah, stay on top of what's happening with Jen Lush. And this has been the Concrete Connection Project podcast.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.